This is Cathy Tichinel's informative speech on global warming, recorded by Christy Tichinel.
Okay, now, how's it look right there?
Hi, my name is Cathy Tichinel, and I'm doing an informative speech on global warming. A quote by Elizabeth Colbert, an author from The New Yorker, said, "People tend to focus on the here and now. The problem is that once global warming is something that most people can feel in the course of their everyday life, it will be too late to prevent much larger, potentially catastrophic changes. The fact is that human activities, economic development, and industrialization are changing the world's climate. These changes will have significant consequences on all living creatures. The expert definition of global warming is an increase in the Earth's average atmospheric temperature that causes corresponding changes in the climate and that may result from the greenhouse effect. My definition is human activities and changes to the environment which are causing changes to the Earth and climate, creating significant consequences for all living creatures. Global warming does not discriminate. It affects all of us in every region of the world. Global warming is no longer an issue facing future generations. The effects are documented all across the planet. In the United States, climate changes such as rising temperatures and sea levels, lengthening growing seasons, lengthening ice-free seasons in the oceans, lakes, and rivers have already taken place. In addition, earlier snowmelt and changes in river flows have also been occurring. When it comes to consumption, the United States consumes huge amounts of natural resources. Americans make up only 4% of the world's population, but we produce 25% of the carbon dioxide pollution from fossil fuel burning. We are by far the largest contributor. In fact, the USA emits more carbon dioxide than China, India, and Japan combined. In Asia, melting glaciers are at a real critical point. As these glaciers melt, glacial lakes are swelling in danger of catastrophic flooding. In Bhutan, glacial retreat has recorded at 100 to 130 feet per year. In the Himalayas, temperatures have risen 1.8 degrees since the mid-1970s. The problem is that developing nations such as Indonesia and especially China and India, which, by the way, could pass the U.S.'s world's top carbon emitter at any day, these developing nations make the point that they are not responsible for the vast majority of carbon dioxide hanging around in the atmosphere. They feel it was put here by the Western countries during their own development over the past 150 years. So they argue that their own per capita emission rates are still far lower than those of the Western nations are, and that climate change is not their responsibility. This may be true, but this is wrong. Future global warming will hinge on how carbon emissions are dealt with, most of which will come from developing Asia. The gravity of climate change politics has moved east to China, India, and Indonesia, and their decisions will largely determine the kind of world we will be living in. In Africa, agriculture is extremely vulnerable to change in growing conditions. There are 80 million farms on the continent, and over 70% of all Africans rely on agriculture for their livelihoods. With less than 4% of the land irrigated, production is heavily dependent on the timing and quality of the rain. With the world heating up, the rains will no longer flow the same patterns, making it difficult for them to rely on their crops. In Latin America, the environmental issue most commonly associated with Latin America is deforestation. Tropical deforestation is the major cause of the climate change. More forests have been destroyed in this region than in any other since 1992. There is evidence of the impact of illegal logging and deforestation. A substantial contributor to carbon buildup stems from deforestation. About 25% of the emissions in the Amazon basin is a prime source. Globalization plays a key role in the effects of global warming. Over the past several decades, businesses began moving from the United States to other countries to have products made. And this allowed businesses to have products made much cheaper than in the United States, but at what cost? The trade agreements such as NAFTA, CAFTA, and GATT may have opened the door for many other countries, but hindered the growth in the U.S. Not only has this weakened the U.S. economy, but it has taken its toll on the environment. Other countries do not follow the manufacturing standards that we have in the United States, and this allows other countries to produce products at a lower cost than domestically, but it also affects our environment. In addition to the environmental effects, production of toxic toys, toxic pharmaceuticals, dog food, and the list goes on, are being manufactured. To add insult to injury, we increase emissions into the air transporting goods longer distances via boat, train, and air. China is a good example of globalization, but the rapid growth causes many problems, such as shortage of food, water, housing, and sanitation. Deforestation has a huge impact on global warming. The Earth's forests are being cleared on massive scale, which more often than not results in damage to the quality of the land. Forests still cover 30% of the Earth, but at the rate they are being cleared, the rainforest will be completely gone in 100 years. Forests are cut down for many reasons, most of which are related to money or the need to provide for one's family. Agriculture is also a big driver for deforestation. Another negative effect that deforestation has on the environment is a loss of habitat for millions of species. 70% of the Earth's land, animals, and plant life in forests live in forests and may not survive the deforestation that destroys their homes. Every year, scientists learn more about how global warming is affecting the planet. If current trends continue, it is likely that certain consequences will occur. Some such consequences are melting glaciers and melting polar ice caps. In addition, in the United States, there is a projected increase in sea levels of at least 3.3 feet by 2100. Although this may not seem like much, even the slightest increase will endanger low-lying island nations throughout the world, and this includes coastal areas such as Europe, Asia, and North America. Coal-burning power plants are the largest U.S. source of carbon dioxide pollution. They produce 2.5 billion tons every year. Automobiles are the second largest source, and they create nearly 1.5 billion tons of CO2 annually. Another large factor contributing to global warming is overpopulation. The greater number of people, the more consumption there is. In turn, more energy is needed to replace consumed goods. Many different gases can increase the planet's temperature. The number of different products and human activities that contribute to global warming are so numerous that finding solutions to the problem is very difficult. Using a refrigerator releases dangerous gases. Turning on lights requires energy from power plants. In addition, more cars are driven and larger amounts of garbage are created. These factors all increase the global warming problem. Already effects from global warming are taking place. At least 279 species of plants and animals are already responding to global warming, migrating north to escape rising temperatures. Coral reefs are highly sensitive to small changes in water temperature. Scientists say if current CO2 emissions continue, the world's coral reefs will be virtually destroyed by 2050. Global warming also rears its ugly head relating to natural disasters. Hurricanes, for example, global warming does not create them, but it does make them stronger and more dangerous. Because the ocean is getting warmer, tropical storms can pick up more energy and become more powerful. Rising sea levels will lead to coastal flooding on the eastern seaboard and other areas such as the Gulf of Mexico. Global warming and its effects is like dominoes. Once you knock the first one down, it hits the next one, and so on and so on. Hot days are getting hotter, rainfall and flooding more intense, storms stronger, and droughts more severe. Weather and climate intensification is taken to the extreme and will be the most visible impact in our everyday lives. With all the doom and gloom surrounding global warming, there is some good news. We know what is causing global warming, and therefore we know what needs to be done to solve it. First and foremost, we must curb our emissions of CO2 and other greenhouse gases. Global warming is experienced throughout the world. The largest contributor is carbon dioxide pollution from fossil fuel burning, and the U.S. is the largest contributor. We need to reduce pollution and immediately. We need to build cleaner cars and more modern electricity generators. It is imperative that we start to focus on renewable energy sources such as wind, sun, and geothermal. In the United States, the American people need to demand progress and make the government step in. The urgency of this issue demands a President and a Congress willing to make climate change as a centerpiece not only of their energy policy, but of their economic program. It is imperative in order to produce broad-based growth and sustain American economic leadership. During the Clinton administration, 30% tighter standards were put on central air and heat pumps, and this reduced emissions by 51 million metric tons of carbon. That is the equivalent of taking 34 million cars off the road. In my opinion, world leaders everywhere need to step in and put programs into place to reduce global warming. The science and the economists are conclusive. Doing nothing about global warming presents a far greater cost than addressing it. Global warming, if not reversed, will consume our national resources and threaten the well-being of future generations. In addition, volatile energy prices and more extreme weather will devastate our economy. For all of us, there are things we can do. We can unplug appliances, chargers, set computers to hibernate, plant a tree, recycle, use the sunlight wisely, taking advantage of the heat from the sun. We can turn off lights when not in use. These are just a few ways that we can help make a contribution. The scale of this undertaking is immeasurable and its potential enormous. But time is working against us. We need to move quickly. Time is of the essence.
Yeah, and global warming. Woo!